Okay, today's guest had two near-death experiences, one at the age of 5 and the other at the age of 17. And through his experiences, he has created a lab dedicated to paranormal research. He is a retired senior communications engineer for one of the world's largest communication companies. He spent 35 years as a power and ground acoustic satellite, uplink, and systems design engineer. Today's guest holds 2 U.S. patents and 4 patent pending applications. He runs his own electronic repair service and is an accomplished musician. He is also a law enforcement officer where he lives and a police academy instructor. Let's welcome today's guest, Ray Feurstein. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
Yep, it's interesting.
And hello.
Yeah, so many people who are involved, I would say, in some type of scientific work or engineering work, usually maybe in many cases left-brained in terms of structuring, in terms of, having experiences that probably they may scoff off until they have some type of proven evidence to believe in something. And from my experience of doing interviews with a lot of people who have this background, sometimes they're encountered with certain situations like you have had, near-death experiences, where their path was supposed to be on the path that they're on now, but they might not have been on that path prior to these experiences. But a person like yourself wasn't on any path at the age of 5. And as we mentioned earlier, many children, who are young are more open and not blocked by the perception of seeing spirit and other entities. Maybe you could just share with the audience your first experience that you've had at the age of 5, what took place.
Well, Adam, I was 5 years old, a typical 5-year-old kid, and I had played demolition derby with my sister's dollhouse in the backyard. Much to her dismay and my punishment. So, with that said, I was told to go out in the backyard, clean up the mess, and then come back in again. And it was late fall. Uh, it was a dusk. The light had a porch light on. It wasn't dark, but it wasn't light. And I did what I had to do, and I was walking back in, and the back porch had a screen door, and the old screen doors had a knob on it that had it was hollow in the back. And I grabbed the knob, and about a second later, I felt this pain behind my right ear. And I went like that, and I had a black wasp in my hand, and I dropped it. And by the time I got onto the back porch, through the kitchen, into the dining room and living room where my mother and sister were, I had no idea. I walked in, and both of them, their mouths and eyes went like this. They went, "Oh my God!" And they come running to me. I had anaphylactic shock from the wasp.
Yeah.
It was a black wasp, and I was puffed up. And my sister described it as I looked like the Michelin tire boy. My eyes were almost closed. I could barely breathe. So my mother called my godfather. My father was an engineer for GE. He was a head engineer for GE, and he was away. And my godfather lived, only a few blocks away. And he came over. They put me in a police car. And the last thing I remember was the police officer saying, "Would you like the lights and siren on?" I said yes, and that was it. I died. So from the trip to from my home to the hospital was about 10 minutes by police car.
Right.
Okay, which was a long time. And in that time, I was told that it was at least 15 minutes, almost 20 minutes that I was under. They had packed me with ice to get the swelling down to help. That's what they used to do. And it's probably what saved my life. I probably would have died if it wasn't for the thermal drop in my body temperature. During that time, as a 5-year-old, I had how much of the world do you really know at 5 years old?
Right,
You
right.
really don't. But what happened was I found myself sitting inside and on top of a tornado, a gray black tornado that was swirling around, no noise, just swirling around. I was like sitting on top of it, hanging on, looking around. And there was another person, there was people that were talking to me, just kind of like reassuring me, you're all right. I didn't have any fear. I wasn't afraid at all. I was more curious as to what in the hell was going on here, you know? So I'm looking, and I moved into this area that was pitch black. I mean, the blackest you can think of, with white dots, crystal clear white dots of light shining down just all over the place. They were just
Wow.
dotted. And so this tornado thing moved towards one of the dots, and it got larger and larger, and it was probably about a 6 foot diameter circle of light. That was all it was just, there was no beam. It was just a light, like somebody lit from the floor up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So and inside the circle, all around it, I could tell that there were people. I can't tell you why, but I just knew there were other people, like either shoes or shuffling, but other voices. There was reassuring, very, very nice, very pleasant voices. Just, you know, Ray, you're okay, you're fine. Don't worry about anything. You're good. We have you. All, you know, just. And I said, okay, okay, you know, I don't care. I was focusing on the light, and in the light were three little kids my age, two boys and a girl. And the two boys had on a white shirt, black pants. Um, they were just normal looking little boys. And the little girl had a sundress on with a ruffle collar. It was beige with blue uh, flowers on it. And it was, I mean, it's that clear in my mind. And she had patent leather shoes, which I found out that's what they were, and white socks with, I mean, that's how clear everything was. Later on, I found out that the little blue flowers I described were forget-me-nots, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were playing with puppies. There's like 4 or 5 puppies, and they were playing with them. And the little girl says, "Come on down, play with us, play with the puppy, with the puppies." And I went to do this, and the voice, and I felt something touch me. They said, "No, you're not ready yet. You're not there yet.
Wow.
You can't go." And she says, "Well, all right, if you can't come down here." And she handed a puppy to me. And as I reached down to grab it, nobody stopped me. As I went down to grab it, there was this like tone. It was like a ooh, like sound that it kind of like reverberated. And next thing I know, I'm I wake up and there's light and there's a sheet over my face. I had been declared dead on the table. And I just took my hands and I went like this with the sheet, took it off, and I said, and the nurse was standing on one side, doctor was on the other. And I go, "Where's my mommy?" And they screeched like little girls, you know. They went, "Ow!" Like, you know, it's really
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in my whole body itched like incredibly, like I couldn't scratch it enough to stop it from itching. And they told me later it's probably because of the medications to try to bring my heart back. The antihistamine type. I
Yeah.
can't think of epinephrine, things like that. That's what they give you for
Right.
anaphylactic. And that really was all to that experience.
Right, right.
There was no angels, there was no celestial lights, there was no clouds, there was nothing. It was just that, you know. It was, I mean, I thought about it a lot, and it's as clear in my mind today as the day it happened. It's
Yeah.
like imprinted. And so, you know, I didn't get any revelations out of it, honestly, other than the memory of what happened and what
Right,
was
right.
like, you know.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that at five, obviously, having no feedback or no pre-existing experiences or communicating over the subject with anybody, would you be like an open book, so to speak, with regards to what you received? Did you, what happened when you, were you able to tell your parents about the experience? Who did you share this with? Well, you didn't.
Nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody. It was. I was 5.
Okay.
To me, it just happened.
Okay.
There wasn't like I said, there was no message or anything. Only the one message is you're not ready. It's not for you.
Okay.
So obviously, those 3 kids were deceased, and they were wherever they were having a great time playing with puppies. You know,
Yeah, but when did
and
when did it?
the little girl was very very interesting. The little girl was blonde. I mean, I saw every bit of their facial features. The 2 little boys looked like twins, but the little girl didn't look like them. And I mean, like I said, I could, if she walked up to me today, I could recognize her. That's how clear it is in my mind still.
So many people who have these experiences report that the near-death experience visions or scenes are more vivid and real than our experience here.
Yeah, the colors. I mean, I said that was a black room and a white dot and a gray black tornado, and then her dress, their outfits were 4K.
Wow. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know
yeah, I
what I'm
understand.
saying?
Yeah. So now you have this experience, and I've interviewed other people who've had near-death experiences at this particular age, like you yourself had, and
Yeah.
they described to me when it became significant for them to have this recall of that experience, the first one when they were younger, when they had a second one. So you had a
Uh,
second.
yeah, and actually that's very true because uh, it was always in my mind, but I never really bothered to say anything to anybody about it. It really wasn't until after the second one.
Okay, so maybe you could fill us in on your second near-death experience in between 5 and 17, I believe.
I was 17 years old, and I was getting ready for prom. I was taking my girlfriend to the prom, and it was at the week of. So it was the Sunday before the Friday night, and I got real bad stomach ache and fever, and my father was treating it with Pepto Bismol and Alka Seltzer. And of course, with the fever, I had aspirin. Back
Yeah.
then. I'm talking 1968. All right, they it got worse, and he took me to the doctor on the Wednesday, and I'm going to mention his name, Dr. Gisela. He's passed away, but he was a good old family country doctor. He was an amazing man. He took a look at me and he goes, appendix, get into the hospital. So they brought me to the hospital. I'm on a gurney waiting to be assessed. And I mean, I don't know if anybody ever had an appendicitis attack, but oh my God. Did you really? So you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
absolutely.
It is excruciating pain, and the fever. I was like 103 for like 2 days, which isn't good for your body. And I'm laying on the gurney, and my father's sitting there with, and all of a sudden, I felt great. The pain, everything went away. And I go, Dad, I feel really good. Now I was bummed out because I wasn't taking my girlfriend to the prom, and she already got a dress, and the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I bought a corsage. Holy crap. So I said, I feel all right. I feel great. Well, he goes out and tells the nurse, and by the time he got back, I was dead. My appendix burst inside me, and I got septic shock
Yeah.
from the poison, but it had been dumping into my system all those days.
Wow.
So it shut down everything. I just, I was done. And I was told, anyhow, they rushed me into the emergency room, the OR, revived me in there, did the operations, and I came out. And I mean, I had tubes hanging out of me. I mean, I got a scar runs across my stomach all the way from side to side where they had to, open me up to clean me out to stop the
Yeah,
infection
yeah,
from
yeah.
going. And in that time, I actually saw light. it was bright, solid white light with like a blue tint to it. It wasn't like it didn't hurt my eyes at all. It just was bright. It just was there. And I was walking, as I guess I was. I don't know. I didn't see my feet or anything, but I saw everything around me, and there were again people on either side of me, a man and a woman, and they were talking to me that you're okay, just worry about it. And I'm like, I'm fine. I was going just what the hell again. And so I'm walking, and as I'm walking, Adam, I'm it was like fade out from white to images, but not. It started out looking. If you ever looked in the bottom of a water glass, that's how everything looked, all distorted, and then it started to come into focus, and then it got out of the white light into like a pastel type thing, and all those people all over the place. I could hear them chattering and talking, and they looked at me and they waved and smiled, and I went, okay, that's great. I didn't know who they were, and there was a bunch of them. They're all standing around talking to each other, and in different types of clothes, different venues of clothes. I mean, I didn't stand and say, "Oh, geez, look at it. He's got a Victorian on." They
Yeah,
had
yeah.
their, clothes. They had clothes on, and they were just, like hanging out and just talking. And then all of a sudden there was ground in some buildings, and then but it wasn't clear so what they were. But coming towards me was a woman in a white dress, and she was probably in her early 50s, I'm going to say. And she walked toward me. She says, Raymond. She says, how are you? And I go, I don't know what's going on. She goes, you'll get it. Just, don't worry. Everything is fine. So I'm not worried. And I had a regular conversation with this woman. She says, I don't know if you know who I am. And I went, I don't know where I am. So who you are is a whole nother story.
Wow,
And
wow,
she
wow.
started laughing. She goes, you got our sense of humor. You're a Feurstein. And I went, oh yeah, that's my name. And she goes, my name is Rose. I'm your grandmother. Now, I never met any of my grandparents except for my father's father briefly while he was living with us. This is my mother's mother. She says, I'm your grandmother Rose. She says, you are not for here. You have more to do. I went, oh, okay. She says, you tell your mother that she's doing a good job by you. And Tommy is with me and fine. I said, okay. I don't know who Tommy was. Had no idea. So I it was nothing spectacular. I was there for a little while longer. She had a pendant that hung about here on her throat, and it was a very ornate silver pendant with a blue stone in the center. And I noticed it because it was like very prevalent, very distinct, very
Yeah, yeah,
pronounced
yeah,
color.
yeah.
All right. Her eyes were blue. She was a pretty woman, for her age. Now I'm 17 looking at this woman saying she's stunning. Um, 50s type hairdo, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So, I mean, I just woke up is what happened. And I woke up and my father was there and um, there was a priest there, uh, uh, father, father Young. In fact, he just passed away. I was an altar boy as well. And so he came to visit and give me last rites because they told him he had died once before when something like that happened,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see what
yeah.
So I was all done and I went home. I was actually 2 weeks in the hospital, which is like they don't do that anymore. But I guess for something like that, they would have to. And I didn't say anything to anybody. Nobody asked me to, I had to go for checkups and, the whole rigmarole and everything. And one day I'm sitting downstairs with my mother, and she says, "You've been talking in your sleep a lot." And I go, "Really?" And you're saying people's names. I go, "Okay, I don't remember." She goes, "What happened? What do you remember?" I went, "Oh," and I mean, I just popped in my head. I went, "Oh," and so I told her the story. And before I said anything about the pendant, I said, "Oh yeah, she had a blue pendant, or she said her name was Rose, and she was my grandmother." And my mother turned white. She just looked at me. She goes, "What?" And I said, "Oh yeah, she also told me to tell you Tommy is okay." And I thought she was going to faint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What she told me was Tommy was an older brother that died. They don't talk about back then. They didn't talk about that. When you were dead, you were dead, and they tried to, that was it.
Buried.
You know, bury it. Yeah. And I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah." She's in your grandmother's name was Rose, and she showed me we have a Bible. In fact, it's here at the camp, and you open it up, it's got all the births and deaths of everybody in the family. It's a German Bible, and which is kind of unique. Nobody does that anymore, I don't think. But um, there was her name at the top, you know,
Wow.
Rose. Yeah, and she was Rose Ginsburg. It became Rose Feurstein. Right? So, um, I mean, that was the second time, and quite honestly, that's what brought up. And then I told her about the other thing. She goes, "Oh my God!" She goes, "How come you didn't say anything?" So I was 5 years old. I
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
I didn't care. I didn't care about that. As far as the 5 year old is concerned, there's no difference between sitting here and being over there.
Right, right, right.
You know,
Yeah. But from 17 to 5 years old, when you had this experience, did it piece together did it piece together the memory of when you were five in some capacity?
oh, actually, it did. The second one brought everything back
Okay.
like a floodgate.
So when you floodgated with this information, did you ask yourself the question, why is this happening? Why am I experiencing this?
No, it's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I no, I never really asked that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I did. I never really thought of it as a why, as a
Yeah.
how. Mostly,
Yeah, I
how did that?
understand that.
Yeah.
The why is big because from my perspective, in talking to people who've had, as we spoke about before, these experiences, and many people weren't on their path, or they may have been headed on the wrong path in some way. Not that you were, but sometimes they were not in the right profession, or they were supposed to have this experience to then be on the path to enlighten others with information of maybe what you're doing now.
Well, the interesting thing was, at 5 years old, at 6, all of a sudden I started playing music. I played this plastic trumpet, which I have right up there on my curio shop, uh, and I was playing taps. And my mother heard me. She says, by ear.
Wow.
And then I played piano by ear. And they asked me if I wanted to take music lessons. I said, yeah. And they go, what do you want to take? I said, I want to take accordion. Why? I have no idea.
I
But
play the
I took
accordion
accordion.
also.
Did you really? That's a,
I have it right here on the floor.
oh, geez, yeah. She's too fat for me. You're too fat for me. I love that one.
Yankovic.
Uh,
Not Yank. Is it Yankovic? Frank Yankovic? Frank something.
no, well, he made
Polish.
fun of me. Yeah,
No, not
yeah.
Yankovic. Somebody
That's a
else.
real song.
Yes,
That's a real
yes.
song. Yeah. But yeah, I played the accordion, uh, and uh, and then I just basically just kept. I've been a musician since I was 7 years old.
Wow.
Um,
So there,
but go ahead.
no, so there was like so there was a download of evoking a talent within you, possibly from that experience.
But I have to say, because didn't think of any of that up to that point. I know I didn't.
Yeah, of course, at 5, not. And
And I don't
maybe,
even know where I got that trumpet from. I quite
wow.
honestly have no idea. She doesn't know where it came from.
Hmm.
You know, all of a sudden, I was out in the side yard, on the side yard, which is part of the driveway, with friends of mine. I'm sitting there playing taps, and the kitchen window was right up here. And she's can you play anything else? And I played a bunch of different songs. In some of them, she says, I didn't know you knew old songs. You
Amazing.
know, there's one called "Drink to Me Only" with Thine Eyes.
I
I
know.
played that.
I played that on the accordion, so I know that song.
Okay, so you know that was one of the tunes that I learned too.
Interesting.
Uh, so that's why they asked me. They said, you know, holy crap, you might as well try to do this. You would have done it. Like I'm a musician now. I teach music on the side. I've been involved with electronics, frequencies, vibration my whole life
Yeah, well,
since that.
like to talk about that. I did you ever have any encounter with your brother Tommy? Any recollections or any memories of that?
No, I wasn't even born when he died.
Okay, but did he come into your life in any capacity in a
Nope,
spiritual way?
nope,
No.
nope, not at all.
Okay.
No, I had another older brother. His name was Joe after my father, but we called him Butch. He was murdered in Troy, New York,
Okay.
and he did contact me. I was 12 years old, and I was um, sleeping, uh, and we had a phone at the top of the stairs in the hallway, and my room was right across the hall from the phone stand. And the phone rang one night, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. The reason I know because I had an alarm clock next to my bed with radium dial, so it was
Wow.
glowing, and I knew what time it was. I got up and half asleep and answered the phone. And a lot of people don't know this. You probably do because you're around my age. But back then, when you had somebody call from long distance, it sounded like they were long distance. You know, it
Right.
sounded like they were
Yeah,
way
ruffled,
static. And
muffled.
so I picked but the phone ringer rang really, really odd. It rang and then drifted down and went bring like that. Bring. And I was like, and so I picked it up and I went, oh, and this voice says, Ray, this is your brother Butch. Now I'm half asleep. So his death wasn't here. I was half asleep. And he says, and I said, yeah, what do you want? It's late. He goes, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to call and tell mom and dad I'm okay. I'm doing fine. I go, all right, all right. He goes, and now you be a good boy. And I went, I'll do the best I can. And he goes, okay. And I hung up, went back to bed, went to sleep. So the next morning I woke up and it's just was, you know, it was a fog. I thought I dreamt the whole thing. Went downstairs. My father was eating breakfast and my mother was making my breakfast. And I sat down and my father says, who was on the phone last night? I go, nobody. Now, the reason I said that because my brother, my mother was very distraught over the murder actually of him. He had epilepsy and he was living in a group home and working there and in Latham, New York. She shut down terribly and you know wouldn't accept his death. And the whole hallway and the staircase leading down was was permeated with, this is prior to the phone call, was permeated with this odor of blue blaze which he wore all the time,
Wow.
and it was almost choking. It was so bad. So me being an altar boy, you know, knew about exorcisms, went to the parish priest, They denounced exorcism. My father insisted, and I showed him in the book, you know, and they went, okay, okay, well, okay, you have to leave the house for 3 days. It's going to take that amount of time to get this done. So went over to my godfather's house. 3 days, we come back and it's all clear. And then the week after is when this phone call happened. Well, I wasn't going to say anything because I wasn't going to bring my mother to tears again about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is years and years and years later. I'm married. I before I go to work, I would drive over to her house. Uh, my father had passed away, and I'd have breakfast with her and then go on to work. Sat down, and she said to me, she goes, "I got to ask you a question. And your dad and I were going to ask you, but he actually passed away before we got a chance, so I'm going to ask you." I go, "Okay." She goes, "Do you remember the night that the phone rang after Butch died?" I went, "Yeah." She goes, "Who was on the phone?" I said, "It was Butch." And I told her the story. And she goes, "I thought so." She goes, "How come you didn't tell us then?" I go, "Because I didn't have it in me to do that. I didn't feel it was right." She goes, "I understand." You have to understand this family was very steeped in the supernatural paranormal that I wasn't aware of until after I told her these things.
Which was what?
My
Yeah.
Well, my great aunt, which was her aunt, who I loved dearly, her name was Lillian, was and my aunt on my father's side, sister, of course, were soothsayers, which is an old term for a fortune teller or a prognosticator. They had all different weird things. Now they're psychics. They're called psychics. So, and in fact, my great aunt, I have a letter from Houdini's wife
Wow.
that, yeah, she had received a message and sent a letter to Houdini's wife to see if that message was him, because he said, if I at all able to, I will send you a message from the other side. And she knew what the message was. Okay. Whatever my aunt wrote to her, she wrote back in a nice way saying, the message from my husband bears no content of life or death.
Wow.
So she must have said, well, it's nice over here or something like that. And she goes, there's been many people that have answered and sent this, and it's not him because he said something specific to me, and this isn't it. And then she died on a train going to New York City, and I have the uh, paper cut out. We have it in a frame, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I had an uncle. He was into the black arts. He was, you know, a bad boy. So and I didn't know any of this. They didn't talk about that stuff back then.
Yeah. What's interesting is the fact that your mother almost, I guess, in terms of the work I do and the understanding of how we evolve in this world, in terms of the parents we choose to be our parents. If a
Do we?
person believes, well, it's my understanding in some type of spiritual sense, we choose the parents to receive the lessons we need to have in order to evolve our soul to a certain, to a certain level in the lifetime that we choose. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not be, agreeable, but I kind of see in some capacity in your situation where it appears your mother almost knew what was going on, but almost was like waiting for you to reveal your
Yeah.
ability from your
Yeah. She said
experiences.
that. She said that. She didn't know whether I was uncomfortable or not. And I said, yeah, of course I was, but I was uncomfortable for you. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. But I see the thing is nobody knows. Nobody knows
Right,
if we
right.
select our parents. We have no idea. There's no experts in the
Yeah,
paranormal supernatural field. I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. I could care less how many sheepskins you have.
right,
Unless you go there and you come back, you have no idea of
right.
what's going on over there. And even after you come back, you still don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah,
You
it's interesting.
really
I
don't.
mean, I've read a few books I've- no Salah, who was I guess a person from
Yep.
Brazil. Yeah, and then I had I interviewed Raymond Moody, and he spoke about his two children that he adopted, and one of them told him years later. He goes, "I remember the conversation you had with mom and yourself that I would be in your life, and I remember that where you were in Greece." So it was so interesting to hear that before the person either reincarnated from that perspective, but as you say,
It's very intriguing about, I mean, uh, supernatural and the paranormal. Uh, uh, there's so many misconceptions. I mean, and this is me. I'm just me,
yeah,
and my background and what I've done as far as research is concerned into the paranormal and supernatural. Um, they have a lot more uh, influence on our world than we do on theirs. And people need to remember that, especially these ghost hunters. I don't do that.
right,
Riling these beings up is disrespectful. They were humans at one time, most of them, not all, but those that are spirits were human. Treat them right, treat them nice. You know, they don't do that. So I don't subscribe to those things,
okay.
those shows
Which
or anything.
which brings us to the subject of one of the lab that you have, which is a product of I guess 20 years of research into the energies that are found during paranormal and supernatural events. So maybe you could just elaborate a little bit more on what you do and what you've experienced or felt or found out.
Well, can I tell you why I got spurred into it? I mean, I believed in everything. I got a broad mind. I don't care. I mean, disprove first what's going on, and then I won't believe or I will believe. But I give, you know, full open mindedness to
Right, right.
anything. Anything is possible. We know that now. But 25 years ago, when my wife and I got became sick, we would leave our bed and go downstairs and sleep on the couch to stop, your coughing or your sneezing or your Ralphing, whatever's going on,
Yeah, yeah. Not interfere with
and
anyone's sleep.
yeah, and so my wife was sick and she went downstairs and she was sleeping down there, and I woke up. It was a Friday night. It was Saturday morning at exactly 2 o'clock. And the reason I know this because I had a digital clock on the other side. And I looked over and I go, oh, she's not back in bed, so I'm gonna go down and see if she's okay. I got down and I have two, it's a, we have an old house built in 1904. So you can walk three abreast down the staircase. And then it's got a 13 and a half foot ceiling at the landing. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
massive staircase. So I'm walking down the stairs and I hear this very young, melancholy, absolutely incredibly beautiful voice singing. All right. My wife has a terrible voice singing. I try to help her, but it doesn't work. Um, so I knew it wasn't her. And I'm going, who's in the house? And they were singing, she was singing six notes and triplets 3 times. And I heard farther down the stairs. I got on the landing and she sang again. And then I ran down the rest of the stairs, went into the living room where my wife was sleeping on the couch, and she sang it again. And it was loud, very loud, but didn't hurt your ears, just like present all over the place. It was like all around you.
what was the
And
sound?
huh?
What was the sound that you heard?
I, if I sing it, I don't want to hurt people's ears, but it, it's la 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 la. Those 3 notes sang like that 3 times each time. She sang it 3 times. She sung the 3 notes 3 times as I walked downstairs. Everything was in threes, which, as you know, is a divine number,
Yeah.
right? I didn't know that. I had another friend of mine named Ray that explained to me some of this because I wasn't really into the supernatural paranormal back then. All of a sudden, she wakes up. I go, "Did you hear that?" And my wife goes, "Yeah, somebody's singing." And she laid back down again because it was disturbing her, and she was sick, you know. And I went, "All right." So I went upstairs, and it was coming out of the dining room, which was right underneath the bedroom upstairs. Went back to sleep. Got up the next morning. She was up already. I said, "Do you remember that singing?" She goes, "Yeah. What was that?" I go, "I have no idea." She goes, "Did something turn on? Was something on?" I go, "What could have been on that did that? There was no radio on. You know, it was one female voice." Adam, I'm going to tell you something. I can still hear it, but it was the most beautiful voice. Absolutely beautiful voice. I would listen to that voice forever. The way it was, but it was melancholy, but it was absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous voice. I've asked some friends that are psychics, look at prominent psychics in our area about it. They said, well, the spirits typically don't do that. So it could have been an angelic, you know, something other than not a paranormal, but a supernatural thing.
Right, right.
And obviously, they were trying to tell you something. Well, this thing, excuse, I have to use this pun, but for 25 years, it haunted me. It was here all the time, all the time. I mean, and there wasn't a day that didn't go by that I didn't think about it. And I knew what I had to do, but I didn't want to do it. I was resisting doing it, and it got to a point where it was almost unbearable for me to not listen to whatever was trying to be told to me. I know that sounds crazy. It's the only way I can explain this thing. I'm not one of those people where, you know, to me there are coincidences. You know, not everything happens for a reason. I'm sorry. There are coincidences. That's life, you know. But this wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't something. This happened for a reason. There's a purpose behind it. And so it, for no real reason, I started to think about building this thing, this device to talk to entities, not just to talk to them, but to um, research energies behind the events, the paranormal supernatural events, to determine where they come from, what they're made of,
Right,
how
right,
they're
right.
generated. Why do people say that the temperature drops in a room? Why is there electrostatic discharge when an entity enters this world? Why do these things happen? That's what I want to know. Now, I'm an engineer, a communications engineer. I was in power and grounding. I was a satellite uplink downlink engineer, design for the military. I did a lot of this stuff. Anyhow, I was always in with frequencies and musical notes, which were frequencies, anything that had to do with vibration. And you know that we all vibrate. We all vibrate. And the universe is one big concert because everything that exists, either organic or inorganic, vibrates. It's the only way it stays together. That's physics. Each one of them puts a tone out, and that tone is unique. It's like a fingerprint. To you, to me, I could have a twin, but he's still going to have a different fingerprint than me, even though the
Right,
twins have a psychic connection.
right,
It
right,
has to
right.
do with vibrations. I got to have to coin a phrase back in the '60s to say, "You give me bad vibes, man." You know, good
Right.
vibrations. The song, it's all part of it. I started thinking about that. I said, they're giving off. They're still different. They don't have a body, but they have this energy, this soul, this signature that's out there that should be able to be detected.
Wow.
I had, I know I had it, and I hesitate to say it this way because um, I just hesitate to say it this way. I'm not that type of person, but it's the only way to say. But I was guided. I know I was guided because things would come to my head, and I end up building. I'd be down in my shop building all this stuff, and the next day I come downstairs. When the hell did I do this? What
Wow.
the hell is this thing? You know, I go, oh, okay, and then I put it together. And it was a marrying of many different technological disciplines, different technologies, plus some that I put together myself. And what I was able to do was monitor, and determine specific frequencies that paranormal and supernatural events occur at. I also found out that, and I, I, I can't show it to you right now, but if you visit the website, you'll see a large prototype of it. I've skinnied it down, but I, I I measure atmospheric conditions, okay, based on the fact that people say that cold and it gets cold and then it's electrostatic and all that. So I have a high gain Geiger counter. I have a cluster pack, sensor pack from Boeing 727 that was given to me by the company because I told them what I was doing. They go, "Oh, that's neat. Here, tell us what goes on." So it's got barometric pressure, humidity, temperature, and altimeter. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm finding is if you're sitting at this, it detects the altimeter. You know what an altimeter
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
And what
The
it does,
height. All right.
where you are relative to
Yeah.
sea level,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay. You're sitting where you are, and say at where you're sitting is 1098.8. That should stay just like that all the time, right? Right? You're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
lifting
Yeah.
your,
The
you're not
fixed
flying your
variable.
house,
Yeah.
right? You're not flying yourself, so you should stay the same. And the barometric pressure shouldn't change much unless there's a storm front, right? It's not true. With when the weird part about it is I've captured all this on videos. Weird part about this lab is I was able to capture like a door opening and closing when an event would happen. When we'd be somewhere, an event would happen. They would talk to us, or they'd come to us, or they would make themselves known. The altimeter would change. It would,
Wow.
yeah. And I couldn't. And I went to a couple physicist friends of mine from in the RPI and one of the other colleges here, and I told them. They said it's impossible, and I go, no, it's not. I got it right out in the car. Let's see what happens. And we went to one of the older buildings and was able to have. And I showed them. They said that's not possible. There's something wrong with the sensor pack. I go,
Wow.
okay,
Wow. Wow.
fine. So I sent the sensor pack back, and it's a company in Connecticut. And I go, it's malfunctioning. And they go, okay. They went through it. He says, no, it's not. It's perfectly calibrated. We recalibrated. We're going to send you another one. We're going to send you yours back. We'll send you another one, set two of them up to see if they don't operate the same. And they did. Whenever there was an event, the the altimeter changed and the barometric pressure changed. It told me that the door, it was like a door opening and closing. Like, and for instance, you go to a hotel somewhere, okay, and you walk in, and there's a vestibule, and then another parting doors, and you walk into the main lobby,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you have the outside doors, vestibule, inside doors, and you walk in. Well, many times you come through, and it's pressurized on the other side because of air conditioning. So you open these doors up and you walk into the vestibule, and then when you open up the other doors, you feel that pressure differential, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Same thing.
So the interesting thing with this concept is that in other words, it's almost like the person was uplifted energetically, or the spirits changed the end.
See,
What
I'm
were you trying to find out with the work with that? What were you doing?
I,
Let's say when
well,
you say an event.
I was trying to monitor and measure anything I could,
Okay.
any medium I could in an atmospheric condition to see what happens and then I can do the why, and then I can go back and research the barometric change, the altimeter change, the dew point change, the temperature changes. I could do all that.
But you found something specific with regards to the work you've done with spirit itself in terms of hearing things or downloading frequencies which you would translated.
Yes. Well,
So
what I found was a specific frequency that I tune this. I have a radiometer, and it's a radiometric that I purchased. This lab cost me over $10,000 to build.
Wow.
Took me 20 years to engineer it, and I just put it online about 3 years ago. By the way, and so this thing, this lab has a whole bunch of different types of technologies involved in it. First time I ever used it, it has a squawk, what I call squawk box, and the guy in Canada wrote the algorithm for the voice thing to be able to hear, and it sounds like you're tuning an AM radio up and down the dial, and words and sentences would come out. Well, initially it came out like English, and then I went to a place and I took very, very rudimentary single laptop, uh, design uh, prototype down to this place called Herkabert to go to a home that was very haunted. The little girl was being scratched and pushed downstairs. It was really bad. We took it there, and it went from speaking English to speaking German.
Wow.
And it was speaking German because Herkimer is a German settlement, and they were in a house that was on battleground.
Wow.
So it was, and we made contact with a Lieutenant Vrooman. He told us his whole name. They went out, they Googled his name. Sure enough, it came up in the records. It
Wow.
was
Wow. Wow.
amazing. And he told us a lot of stuff. Now, there was a woman in there. There's an angry woman in the house that scratched the girl, the young girl. Adolescent girls, adolescent women, adolescents, females are like magnets to supernatural and paranormal. Um, and some of them continue to be that way, but a lot of it happens during adolescence,
Why?
and it's very, very strong, very strong. Men, not so much. Our egos get in the way.
Oh,
But
okay. In other words, the females have a more sensitivity towards understanding what took place.
no, they are more susceptible to connection with spirit world.
Okay.
That's why there's more female
Female.
psychics than there are male psychics.
Right. Right. Right.
But
Right.
honestly, unless you get in touch with your feminine side, and then possibly it would go. I don't
Absolutely.
know.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
speculation, speculation.
So
But
with
but this thing, and then I took the whole thing and I brought it to in a larger version, which is the video I'd like you to see on the website. For the very first time, out with the full blown lab to Fort William Henry up in Lake George, New York, and we're in the dungeon where triage was set up for the wounded soldiers. It just blew us away. The amount of conversation that was going on. It changed from German to French, which French and Indian War. Holy crap! So
yeah.
we
Yeah.
had English, French, German, and a woman that came who was, I didn't know, she was a shaman. A woman from the Iroquois Nation said they're speaking Iroquois.
Wow.
Of course, we couldn't understand it. We didn't know. We were getting these voices. I had to put a translator on it. So I have a translator built in to this. And I also decided, for whatever reason, to put on a transcription device. We're picking up even more conversation that we don't even hear. It just comes across in sentences. You ask questions, they repeat things, or they tell you, or they call your name. They call me all the time. So it's evolved from being a research uh, device to being a research device that we can now communicate and get information from them. They told us a lot over the past 3 years. I've learned so much, so
Wow.
much.
Wow. So in other words, you actually hear the voices,
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
and is
yeah. We have certain voices, certain beings and entities, spirits, whichever you want to call them, are always there with us. They've been there from the very beginning, from the day I turned that thing on.
and so is the voice usually in a male or female, and is there a specific message?
Male and female, yeah. There's a male voice comes across, little guttural, little Tron-like sounding. There's a female voice. She always screams out, devil, demon, evil at us. And I go, and her name is Rose, by the way. We found this out going to another um, uh, session at another place in Scotia, New York. It was a brothel at one time. Now it's an eatery,
Well,
and she was there. That's we got her, and she was screaming at us and screaming. I mean, just it was. We had to turn the volume down on it because she would scream so loud. And one woman said, "Why are you screaming at us? We can hear you." And she said, "No one listens." And it was. We found that uh, she was a waitress in a brothel.
wow, wow, wow.
Okay, okay, you know what I'm doing here. Okay, a waitress in a brothel, a woman of horizontal refreshment. Is the best way I could put it. And she had two children that died in a fire in the building next door while she was working. And she committed suicide in that building. She hung herself in the cellar. And she told us all this. And we were able to verify a fire in a building next door and children that had died, but no names. And she stays with this unit. She's with us all the time now, and
Wow,
they're
wow.
very friendly. They're just we got a lot of, I mean, and there's a few other voices that come through that are always there. Um,
Has
we
has there been a specific message that has any significance for the future? Any type of future events or any information that's relevant?
I was I asked I we ask that questions all the time. They say things, they say some things, but um, they don't give up a lot of future information. I've not seen the future information. The interesting thing was 2020 when COVID hit. I had I had it on and I was talking to it. I was talking with it, I should say. And I said, "What can you tell me about what's going to happen with this COVID thing?" That's very early. It's March when it first started. March. The voice come out clear as a bell. Said, "You will be like we are now." I said, "Well, thank you very much." In other words, people are going to die. And I said, "Are there going to be a lot?" And they said, "Many angels will be made." It
Wow.
was, yeah, that was probably the most profound thing I heard out of this thing.
Now, is if a person is doing the reading from the machine, now each person's own energetic pattern or field will interfere with a person's interpretation of what comes through in some capacity. In other words,
Well,
what you attract to the information. Would you say
yeah,
that?
well, I send out this vibrational tone, an acoustic tone, and a radio frequency tone. Okay, and it's like a beacon. It's almost like a. They described it as a porch light being turned on for them. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
they are drawn to it, and that's what I do. I set that up. We let it go for about an hour. Your personal vibration, your personal energy pattern is not interrupting anything. Actually, it to sit in front of this machine. I do virtual ones that don't work as well as sitting right there with it. And so many times that we're there. I keep saying we. I don't explain that. My daughter and I were a father daughter team, and we go out and try to give closure to some people that have lost their loved ones. And I mean, I've got dozens of letters and cards thanking me for that, and I had nothing to do other than build it and present it to the people. Having closure is a big thing for a human, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
to move on in life. And these people follow us all over. Whenever we have a session, whenever we have an event, you know, uh, we went to the Adelphi this last January, Adelphi Hotel in Saratoga, and very haunted. Oh my God, very haunted. And all these people came that way, and they just draw this really good energy.
Right. I was going to ask you, you say very haunted. Is it because certain places draw more spirits, or aren't there spirits in most places
Well,
that exist?
the
Or
interesting thing, I mean, and this is excuse me, I'm going to tell you what my theories are.
Yeah.
But one of the things is, if I was to come and visit you, I have to get in my car, train, or plane and come see you. You're in Jersey somewhere. Um, that's an environmental and a spatial thing that we as humans have to endure. They don't have that. I get voices in Schenectady where I live from the fort that is like 60 miles away from me. They
Wow.
don't have a mile thing. They
Right,
don't
right,
have a
right.
time thing. So it means absolutely nothing to them. They're just wherever they feel like they want to be, that's where they are.
Okay.
That's what it seems like, you know.
Interesting. Yeah.
And
Okay.
and the other interesting thing is, I told you when I died the first time that there was a tornado. Well, that became significant in qualifying why the voices come through my device the way they do. Um, you're in a time frame right now of your own making because of your specific frequency. You have a body frequency and you have a spirit frequency. Both of them are different, but they're almost the same. They're like a harmonic from each other. I'm built a device that I can measure your what I call your mass resonant energy or mass resonant frequency. So you put your hand on a plate, on these two plates, and you sit, and it gathers that information, knows what your vibrational state is, and gives me the frequency. It's like reading a radio signal. So you're
Wow.
giving off this radio frequency signal all the time. Everybody is. Chair is doing it, table's doing it, hammer, rock, you, me, plant, everything. And they tune in through this device. Interesting thing is I found that they talk to each other now through this device. We'll watch conversations go across the screen and listen to them talking and saying things to each other. And
Wow.
people go, well, it's on there's a radio station or you're on the internet. I said, nothing's connected like that.
Yeah,
Nothing is
yeah.
connected to internet. Nothing's connected to any of that.
So do you think a person like yourself who built the machine and has had these experiences like you've had, maybe the experiences have shifted your frequency to a level that draws a closer connection to the
It,
spirit world?
it's possible, but without a baseline
Right.
reference, who the hell I don't know. Excuse me, I don't mean to say
Yeah,
that,
yeah. I'm
but
just
who knows?
I'm just surmising based upon
It's.
the
I think that if you go through an NDE, that something significant changes in
in, in the
it has
frequency as well.
something, whatever it is, something changes. I know it does.
So in other words,
At five
maybe
years old,
maybe
hmm
you went through a frequency tune up, so to speak, with these two experiences,
or tune in.
or tune in to make
Yeah,
you prepare you for the work that you're doing now.
yeah. I do firmly believe now, and I didn't before, because I'll tell you right now, I wasn't really into the paranormal scientific, supernatural stuff. This guy Ray Miller, who just passed a year ago, I knew him for 58 years. He was my brother, my best friend, and my brother. He actually dragged me kicking and screaming into this stuff. And once I got acclimated, then I started telling him, he goes, holy crap. He says, it's been part of you this whole time and you didn't even acknowledge it. And I go, I didn't have any reason to,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know?
When you tune into the machine, do you initiate conversation or the other side initiates conversation?
Sometimes we don't have to. The neat thing is, that old saying, you can't take it with you. Well, the treasures of life isn't gold or silver or money.
Right.
It's who you are. That's your treasure.
Yep.
And you take your treasure with you because they've proven to me that one, they have memory, not just of what they were, who they knew, but they also remember you, me, as a human because they say my name. They also have a sense of humor and they get pissed off. They have busted my chops. I don't know how many times. And I got to tell you shortly, I thought it was the funniest damn thing. And I got it on video. It was at the fort. It was one of our events. And Adam, I'm telling you, my daughter was there and one of my friends that was helping us set up. And this person that worked at the fort shut all the breakers off without me knowing it and then turned it back on again, which jolted my system and knocked it damaged the lab because of the surge.
Right.
So I'm there fixing it, which I had backups. I'm an engineer. Sorry, I got backups for everything. And one of the cameras wouldn't come on, so I'm fussing with him. I'm going, and I hear this very British voice, very English voice say, "It's rubbish."
Wow.
And I go, "Thank you. I'm trying to fix it." And a female voice says, "That's garbage." And I said, "Give me a break." And then I hear, ha, 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 come across. And my
Wow. Wow. Wow.
daughter is looking, the guy, the president of the corporation that owns the thing, he was there. His name is Sam, great guy. He sat back out of the chair and he goes, they just, they just busted your chops. I went, yeah, they did.
Holy
And I
cow.
got this all on video. It's all on film. I was like stunned. And I'm looking, I go, thank you very much, you guys. They do it all the time.
It's so interesting.
They're
So it's
they're very in tune. People say that, and they told me that it's untrue because I've talked to them. I tell them what is said of their realm and themselves, and they go no. They flat out say no. Some of them want to be here. They're happy. They're fine. Leave them alone. Don't pester them. You know, don't call them names just to make them rile them up. Don't do that. You know, it's disrespect. These ghost hunting shows are just I hate them. You don't hunt humans. You don't hunt a spirit. That's not right. That's me. I'm
right,
sorry.
right, right, right.
Some are trapped because they didn't know they died. Some because they were so afraid and so distraught that they didn't know well enough to go. And some don't care. They're just here. They're just a free spirit, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, and we went to Gettysburg. I got a bunch of things on Gettysburg on the site too. And you see they have this repetitious snapshot, this film strip of these soldiers marching through woods with some on horses and some down. You'll see that when you go on there. And it repeats itself and it repeats itself. And it's like a film, and I call it a film strip. And it's because there at Gettysburg, uh, there was so much anger, hate, fear, sorrow, all the really hard emotions
Right.
that brings people like that together as brothers, but also separates them. Um, Imprinted a stamp, if you want to say, on time and space. That's how I see it,
Yeah, yeah, it's
and
interesting.
it'll play over because that energy has not been released, and it plays over. And it's not ghosts, it's not spirits. It's a snapshot of what happened,
A visual snapshot.
a visual snapshot, and
That's
you've heard it
interesting.
before.
I knew soldiers who I knew people who unearthed the World War II Soviet soldiers in the grave sites in Russia, and they told me that at nighttime they would see the soldiers marching through the woods repetitively, and when they'd wake
Right.
up in the middle of the night. So
Yep.
that imprint. I
Yep.
interestingly, your work is so inspiring because it's almost as if you're became a lighthouse for this information to channel through you in an electronic uh, capacity,
Yeah.
so to speak. Uh,
Venue.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and the venue is so interesting because so many people usually need to speak to a medium and have someone make contact for them through
Yeah.
their interpretation. And your interpretation of using this machinery is so interesting because it gives it a three-dimensional effect and five-dimensional connection. Uh, and what would you like leave the audience with in terms of like from your experiences or the work you're doing about life itself and what you've experienced?
I'm going to tell everybody that I, I have never been afraid of death, even more so now than ever. I don't want the pain and everything that goes along with it. Just let me fall asleep, please, or one of those snap off ones. But I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of what's on the other side. You got to be more afraid of what's going on in the world here than what's going on over there.
Right, right, right.
Um, I would not fear death, and I would not mourn people who have died, I would feel happy for them because they're going to be where they want to be with whom they want to be with it, on another life journey.
Absolutely.
I don't call it life after death. I call it life after life. And
It's
I
inspira-
also,
ins- inspirational.
pardon me,
No, it's
but
inspirational. Absolutely.
and also the near death experience. I joke about it with some people, but I don't call it near death. I call it near life because I was dead. So I was near life, more near life than I was, to say so. So I call them near life experiences. Over there is called near life experiences. So over here we call them near death. Over there they call them near life.
Right, right. Coming back in a two-way street.
I'm just joking, but
If somebody wanted to view your videos of the information that we spoke about, where could they do that?
would you wanted to know? You mean the website?
Yeah, the website or the Facebook page that you have is.
Yeah, it's a Facebook website. It's get this right. It's facebook.com/ uh, PSR Labs. Okay, or type in Paranormal Scientific Research Lab.
I'll,
PSR
I'll
Labs.
put I'll put the link below anyhow.
Yeah.
In terms of
Well, that's right. I sent you one. Yeah.
yeah, you sent me the link. I'll put it down. But I want to thank you so much, Ray, for giving me the opportunity to talk with you, for you to share your insight and your experiences, which sometimes for a lot of people is rehashing the past and bringing the past to the present moment, which is not that easy. But thank you so much for giving the inspiration of knowing what lies beyond this realm, and that life is a continuum, and that we go from one life to the next life. And as you said, we have the opportunity, in most cases, to communicate with this world once we're not here anyhow. So thank you for joining me and sharing this information.
I appreciate it and thank you for asking. We stay in touch and keep your spirits high.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.